Henry's concern, even around classical computing for 25 years, had been that it's moving a lot faster than our institutions seem, happily able to deal with, and that the change from artificial intelligence would be even greater.
This week, the global race for dominance in AI began in earnest as the Chinese company DeepSeek moved ahead of US firms for the first time. But beyond its profit-making potential, and even beyond its geopolitical uses, the emergence of AI raises profound questions about human evolution. And it's those questions that Henry Kissinger asked in his final book, Genesis, written alongside two of the world's foremost technologists, the former Google chief executive Eric Schmidt and Craig Mundie, the former chief research and strategy officer at Microsoft, who joins me now. Craig, welcome to Times Radio.
Thank you. Always good to be here.
Thanks very much indeed for being with us. First up, Craig, let's talk about DeepSeek. Does the emergence of DeepSeek represent a sort of a watershed moment in AI and AI production?
I don't really think it does.
Right.
Its significance is that what might have been expected to be a normal progression, in this case, came from the Chinese. It doesn't really exceed the capabilities of the existing systems, and in some areas it probably doesn't even match them. While it's gotten a lot of publicity, I think a number of things have been overstated relative to its cost effectiveness and its capability. It's an important step in the evolutionary process simply because some clever Chinese people have brought it to the market. But I don't think it's as big an advance as has been portrayed.
Right. Okay. Look, in terms of, just generally AI, and in terms of the human evolution aspect, how significant a moment in human evolution is AI, both in terms of what it is now and what it will be? Is it like inventing the telephone, or is it more like inventing fire or the wheel?
Well, I think you could say closer to fire and the wheel.
Right.
In that it represented a qualitative change in the way human existence progressed. This is the biggest invention humans have ever made.
Right.
It will ultimately change everything about everything in both technical domains and probably ultimately geopolitical domains. The reason Henry Kissinger, who was a longtime friend and our collaborator on this book, was so concerned that he devoted the last 5 years of his life, from age 95 to 100, to this question was he thought that the implications of having a machine intelligence that exceeded human intelligence was just unprecedented and would be ultimately, the most profound change that we've had to work our way through.
Did it worry him in the same way that nuclear weapons worried him?
It worried him in that it represents a very rapid change that has broadly disruptive effects. Henry's concern, even around classical computing for 25 years, had been that it's moving a lot faster than our institutions seem, happily able to deal with, and that the change from artificial intelligence would be even greater. And therefore, his concern was that, the chances that we would end up in a chaotic management of the disruption was more and more likely, and that was troubling to him.
This idea of us no longer being the most advanced intelligences on the planet, some of us already aren't, some of us I'd imagine probably are, Craig, but some of us already aren't. The idea of humans not being that. You wrote the truths produced by AI are manufactured by processes that humans cannot replicate. Machine reasoning is beyond human subjective experience and outside human understanding, which basically means that we will be presented with truths that we as people cannot understand, which changes our understanding of the concept of truth itself since the Enlightenment. Flesh that out a bit for us, because it's such a fascinating and worrying idea.
Also in the book, it starts by talking about polymaths, human polymaths, and their importance over the course of time. First they would be privately able to influence the leaders of the day. Sometimes that scared leaders, and it wasn't to their benefit, but mostly they had a positive effect. When technology evolved and societies evolved to where the polymaths could actually convene in groups, there were more advances. And these machines are essentially the ultimate polymath. But they're not even limited in the number of domains in which they can have expertise. It's essentially unlimited. And in each case, it will meet and now exceed the capability of humans. So the reason humans can't really fathom some of the things these machines will do is because the cost of interaction between humans precludes them from collaborating in a way that combines all their potentials. But the machine does that intrinsically. And so that does give us what I think its greatest gifts will be, which is the ability to solve problems that we would otherwise not solve, including understanding our own biology. But it does leave us in a situation where the classic post-Enlightenment model of explaining to people how you reach your conclusions and hoping that they can reproduce them won't be readily done by the humans themselves. And therefore you end up not just with the concept of truth, but even discovery and scientific advances being made in ways where humans, even after seeing it, may not fully be able to understand it.
We're going to have to trust things we can't understand. It's a bit like faith in a way.
It is. And in fact, importantly, your choice of that word is the reason I'm here in London this week talking about the book. In the book, we end by saying we're sober optimists about the evolution of artificial intelligence. We recognize that there can be risks, but we also recognize that we're at a time where if humans come together and exploit their own agency and utilize these machines at a time where they're still evolving and where we still have controls on them, that we can, in fact, change the course of human evolution itself and society, and that will ultimately be, what creates the greatest opportunity for benefit from these machines. But to do that requires trust. And up to this point, neither the companies nor the governments that have been involved have really focused, in our opinion, on a comprehensive strategy that would produce trust in these systems. And in essence, the book is a call to action to come together with that, and proposes that we see a path to do that kind of thing, ultimately on a multinational basis, and that is important for humanity to prosecute now.
I mean, among the many fears that AI sort of prompts in people, I suppose one is that we're just going to forget how to do stuff. Speaking as a journalist, we worry a lot that people are going to forget how to write, but maybe people will also forget how to code. People will forget how to make music because the AI does it all for us. And I'm sure you understand that fear that people have, that we're going to lose some of the most wonderful things about being a human because it will just be done for us at minimal effort and minimal cost.
Yeah, I'm probably more sanguine about that, only because, in my own personal lifetime, computing went from a very, small capability to something that is unbelievably potent, culminating in this artificial intelligence. When I went to college, I still had to use a slide rule to multiply things. And trust me, I forgot how to do that, and it doesn't bother me at all.
Sure.
And all of society today is not pining for, long division to be done on paper with a pencil. And so you could say this is just a dramatic ratcheting up of the number of things where some combination of computing and robotics and automation, in fact, are going to go beyond what we've been able to do before in terms of amplifying human capability and ultimately taking burden off of humanity. And I think that, that's the trade-off that we face. People are uncomfortable because they can't really understand what that future is going to be like. There's no clear evidence or picture of it. And so there's a natural fear of change and uncertainty, but I don't think it's different than what we've experienced since the wheel and fire and every major technological invention since that time.
Well, except that once we'd invented the wheel, we could understand the wheel. We could understand what the wheel was doing. Once we discovered fire, we could understand fire. And as you're saying, this isn't like that.
No, this is a qualitative change. It's why we say no matter how you assess it, this is the biggest invention we've ever made.
Yeah, I mean, the wariness that people have. So we had a statement this week from the Vatican warning that AI contains a shadow of evil that can lead to loneliness and enslave workers. Your book is, of course, much more positive than that. But the fact that you have something like that coming from the Vatican, I guess it raises the question that is AI and the people making AI and governments that begin to rely on AI or indeed allow AI, they're going to have to bring people along with them, aren't they? Or is this going to happen whether people like it or not?
My own view is if you look at the adoption of ChatGPT, which was really the first practical offering to the masses, it was the most rapidly adopted technological software product or service in history by a big margin. And even DeepSeek, which doesn't represent really a technological advance, but given its notoriety, perhaps overstated in its importance, in some dimensions, it was the top of the download list last week. So what we've seen now is that the people are voting with their fingers, and the use of these things, the adoption of them. And while on one hand, some people may be concerned, the people that are using them are typically awed by the power of these things to help them do things that they want, whether it's companionship or writing an essay. Or filing their taxes. I think the adoption is on an unstoppable path, and therefore our governments are going to have to come to grips with that.
I mean, one example of the sort of positive potential of AI that you've used is in education, where rather than one person teaching 30 children, each child could have their own personal teacher and so on, which I guess is really easy to understand in terms of the cold transmission of knowledge. But teaching isn't just about that. Teaching is about inspiration. It's about human connection. I wonder if that goes right to the heart of the things that people feel that in the book, yourself, fear that we could be losing. Yes,
it was interesting. I was at Oxford yesterday, and I actually, mentioned that example when somebody asked about education. I said, we advocate, or I do, that we should see a return to Socratic type of teaching. And they pointed out, they said, well, hey, we still do that at Oxford. And I said, yes, but it isn't very scalable, even at Oxford. And certainly, it's not been able to be replicated elsewhere effectively. And so being able to take children from a very young age and have them have a personal Socratic tutor, I think in terms of education, I believe will do more than just be cold. One of the reasons that I see that in other domains, for example, in medicine, there have been trials now, not only of how well these otherwise not specially trained machines can exceed diagnostic skills of doctors. Doctors then claimed, but our importance, one value we have is empathy. So then they did clinical trials of the relative empathy of the doctor and the machine in the mind of the patient. And the machine exceeded the doctors in empathy too. And it was interesting to look at why. People said, well, the machine has time for me. I can ask it dumb questions over and over again, and it helps me understand.
And the human doesn't have that time.
And the human doesn't have that time.
That's fascinating.
And so, I don't know what it is today, but not long ago, one of the fastest growing paid services built around AI or companionship applications.
Yeah. Well, look, unfortunately, we too are short of time. So briefly, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you that you're talking about the kind of the guide rails, the kind of laws, the kind of regulations that need to exist to make this all happen in a safe way. Briefly, what kind of things are we talking about here?
Well, I think I would say it slightly differently. Most of the current activities use the words you used: guidelines, guardrails, etc. What I believe, and the book was predicated on and talks a bit about, is that the only way ultimately to contain these AIs and keep them broadly aligned with human values and societal rules is to use an AI to control the AI. And in part because of the things you pointed out, that when the AI is doing things that humans can't anticipate or understand, the idea that they could write a rule about that just doesn't make sense. And so if that's the asymptote, then you have to start with a different approach. So the book outlines a process that includes not only a revised technical approach, which utilizes artificial intelligence itself to understand the rule set and human values and provide this continuous guidance, but points out that to make this happen, we have to have legal adjustments. We have to understand what the implications are on a geopolitical stage. That requires policy adjustments. And then ultimately, you have to deal with things like non-proliferation. If you get some group of countries and companies that want to collaborate and others that don't, then you're going to have to find some way to basically separate these so that you don't get free riding by the people that otherwise don't want to work in an aligned way.
I'm afraid we have to leave it there, but thank you so much. Completely fascinating.
It's great to be
Craig
here.
Mundie,
Thank you.
Great to have you on. And Genesis by Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt, and Craig Mundie is out now.